And so the one-arm row is an absolute no for me, putting it number 1 on my list of the worst back exercises. What's up guys, Jeff Cavalier, ATHLEAN-X.com. What you see behind me is a bunch of different back exercises, many of which you either have done in the past or you're still doing right now. But after today, you're going to want to get rid of a few of them, because I'm going to help you to rank them from the worst to the best, leaving you only with the best back exercises that are going to deliver the gains that you're after. And so as we kick off this list here, it's important to first define the criteria that goes into the selection and the ranking of these back exercises. First and foremost, are these exercises capable of being progressively overloaded? And no, this list is not being populated by those that are the best strength building exercises, but we do know that strength leads to hypertrophy, which is the main focus of the list. Secondly, we know that the back has a lot of muscles in it. This particular episode here is going to focus on those that are doing the best job of helping you to build bigger lats. Future breakdowns in the series can focus on the other areas of the back, like the upper back and traps, or maybe even the lower back, but for here, we're really looking at the lats. And finally, guys, is the exercise safe? A lot of people will perform any exercise in the pursuit of gains, but here on this channel as a physical therapist, I have to consider safety. I'm going to build that into the selection criteria for every one of these exercises. And so now with the groundwork laid, it's time to start working from the bottom up, the worst category here, and I'm looking at my number 1 no, and it's a version of the row. It's the one-arm dumbbell row. You see, I don't dislike the unilateral aspect of the exercise, that's not it. But when you put one knee up on the bench as you do, this is actually introducing a stress to the groin that I've talked about in many videos before that I'm just not comfortable with, literally, as I've given myself 2 hernias from the exercise. You put an asymmetrical strain on the inguinal canal, which is oftentimes a weak spot for men as it is, which can oftentimes lead to the hernias that we don't want. The big thing about it, though, is we have better options that don't require us to have one knee up on the bench. We'll get back to that in a second, but for now, the one-arm row is an absolute no for me, putting it number 1 on my list of the worst back exercises. All right, so now making our way up through the worst exercises for your back, we have to look next to the lat pull-down. But no, not any version of the lat pull-down, but the behind-the-neck version of the lat pull-down, because where you pull to makes all the difference in the world. You see, this variation takes those elbows out of the scapular plane, the natural plane they prefer to move in, angled about 45 degrees forward, and flares them far too much out to the side. And what that does is it forces the shoulder into a lot of internal rotation. While those arms are up overhead, internal rotation with elevation can lead to impingement problems. Guys, do me a favor and put that bar in front of the body and put this exercise at the top of your list of ones to skip with the big red X. And so with that, I get to break out my blue marker now as we work our way up the rankings into the better category. Good exercises, but still with limitations. And the first one we look at is the renegade row. And while this does allow us to hit the lats through a rowing motion, we have to look beyond that because we're being compromised by the load we can actually use on the exercise due to more of that instability. Now, we're not talking about that asymmetrical lower body instability that we have for the one-arm dumbbell row, but we're just shifting it up the kinetic chain into the core. And if your core is weak, you're not going to be able to lift a lot on this exercise. So if we're looking for hypertrophy, we're undermining our ability to achieve it by introducing a variable that really doesn't have to be there in the first place. And also the row itself, the range of motion is being cut short by the floor. Unless you want to use your front delt to lift the dumbbell out in front of you to increase that lat stretch, you're limiting your ability to take advantage of the stretch reflex that can produce more gains as well. Guys, for all these reasons, though the exercise is one I program myself, mostly in circuits or metabolic type workouts, the exercise for hypertrophy is limited and therefore it deserves the blue circle here for better, just not great. Moving on to the better category here, it actually pains me to see this exercise sit so low on the list, but we're talking about the deadlift. Look, remember the criteria here, lat development. And while the deadlift itself requires the lats to be completely engaged in order to keep that bar tight to your body, it does so through an isometric contraction that doesn't necessarily lead to the greatest overall hypertrophy gains for the lats. Now, ironically, when we look at the muscle gains in the upper back and traps through the same isometric contraction, those tend to be better. But again, we're going to reserve that for a later video. But suffice it to say that even though the deadlift is one of the greatest exercises of all time, when it comes to lat development, it doesn't check all the boxes, and therefore it just gets the blue circle for the better category. And next up here in the better category, we have another exercise like the deadlift that starts from the floor, but does a much better job of hitting the lats, but not without its drawbacks. We're talking about the Pendlay row. And here we have to look at the risk and reward of the exercise. Does the reward of pulling the bar through a greater range of motion off of the floor outweigh the risk of attempting to do so with a body not prepared to do that? You see, the slightest bit of hamstring inflexibility or a lack of lumbar extension mobility is going to compromise your ability to perform this safely. Even though we can better target the lats from this completely horizontal position, at what risk are we doing it? When we realize again that there's better options by simply shifting your torso slightly higher, I just can't make this exercise rise too far up the list, so therefore it's going to sit here in the better category only. And so with that, now I get to break out my yellow marker as we continue our way up the rankings, this time into the better still category. And for the first exercise here, I want to look right here at the tripod row, because this one actually gives us a chance to correct some of the things we didn't like about some of the previous exercises, namely the one-arm dumbbell row and that Pendlay row we just covered. What do we have here? Well, we have asymmetrical loading now being symmetrically loaded across the lower body, because all we have to do is take that knee off of the bench and just put ourselves in this position with one hand stabilizing our upper body. And doing just this, again, allows that symmetrical loading of those pelvic muscles that don't now have to undergo any of those stresses that we don't want to introduce. Regarding the Pendlay row, I actually have a chance to achieve as much of a horizontal position as I want on this exercise, because I have the additional upper body support that allows me to do so without putting my lower back at risk. All in all, this is a simple tweak to make that takes some of those limitations and now puts them in your favor and puts this as the first in the category of better still. Moving on to the better still category, we have an exercise here that not only allows us to target the lats well, but introduce an all-important component that gets overlooked in our training called straight arm scapular strength. We're talking about the straight arm pushdown. Now, we talked about the benefit of having the lats involved in the deadlift and their ability to stabilize that lift. This puts us in that same end position, but it gets us there dynamically. The lats are working to pull that arm out from in front of your body down to your side, allowing us to focus on the adduction function of the lats and minimize some of those other back muscles that oftentimes like to kick in on those back exercises. That being said, you have to make sure you're paying attention to the exercise name itself, the straight arm pushdown. Any little bit of bend in the elbow here is going to invite the desire of the triceps to kick in and help you do the exercise. If you pay attention to how it's performed, then it deserves its spot here squarely in the better still category. And so if you watch my chest exercises ranked from best to worst, you have watched all the ones in this series, right? Well, if not, I'll link 2 of them for you at the end of this video, and then just make sure you're subscribed so you never miss any of them when I put one out. Then you might be wondering what this next exercise is doing in the back exercise video, and we're talking about the dumbbell pullover. You see, how you perform an exercise determines what muscles work. When we do the dumbbell pullover with the focus being the lats, we want to make sure that we flare those elbows out way out to the side. Now, the benefit of this exercise is the stretch that we can achieve on the lats by doing it. If we can increase the stretch, we can increase the recruitment capabilities of the lats on the exercise. Now, how do we do it? Well, we simply let those arms drop back over our head. But what if we have limited shoulder mobility? We still have a safe alternative. You just simply drop your hips down lower, realizing that we can take the attachment points of the pelvis and the arm and stretch them out away from each other without having to go into a limitation in mobility that just doesn't allow us to. The point is, this exercise has been a staple lat developer for many, many years because it can deliver the gains. If you know how to perform it right, the dumbbell pullover gets another yellow circle here for a better still exercise. Interestingly, for you bodyweight guys out there, you actually too can get the benefits of this exercise without even having to own a single dumbbell. You can do the human pullover. And what this does is it takes a concept that is tough for many to grasp, the relative motion concept. And instead of moving your arms on a fixed body like you would do in a dumbbell pullover, you move your body on fixed arms. But the arms are doing all the work. The abs here are stabilizing your body in space, but the arms are pulling as hard as they possibly can in order to lift the weight of your body, effectively allowing you to place a great overload on the lats and allowing them to grow even when you don't have access to any equipment. And lastly, in the better still category, we have another variation of the row, and this time we're talking about the seated cable row. And right off the bat, we actually know we can use some heavy weights here. Why? Because we can utilize our legs to help us a bit and let the eccentric focus of the exercise take over. By allowing our legs to help us push and then controlling that eccentric, we get the overload every single time we allow our arms to reach out in front of our body. That being said, I would prefer that you use a V handle here if possible, because we realize we're not going to have that wraparound benefit of the lats with any of the handles that we use. And if you introduce something like a straight bar, you're going to get those arms into further extension, yes, but that's going to kick in the rear delts more. The rear delts being weaker than the lats is going to limit the amount of weight you can use. So the V handle works nicely here. Just be sure that when you're reaching forward here, you're not allowing the low back to round with you. Keep that low back in a good, firm, safe position, and you'll get all the benefits this exercise has to provide and put it right here firmly in the better still category. And so now I get to break out my green marker as we continue to work our way up the rankings, this time to the almost best category, all great exercises that allow me to showcase that wraparound capability of the lats that I mentioned. And I also now get to kick this off by showcasing one of the best to ever do this, John Meadows. You see, the Meadows row, named after him, gives you the chance to really feel like your elbow is moving through space in a way that doesn't put any stress on your shoulder. And as I mentioned before, you're allowed to do this out of that tripod setup with both feet on the floor, avoiding that asymmetrical loading that we always try to avoid from any other type of row. Beyond that, guys, it's not just a great exercise, but it's named after a great man. John Meadows was a friend of mine, and he had that fitness education first focus on his channel, always staying out of the drama, something I think we could all respect. That's why the Meadows row here belongs as my first in the category of the almost best. Continuing now in the almost best category, we actually have probably my favorite exercise of all time when it comes to back exercises. It's just not ranking all the way at the top because it requires a machine that not everybody has. We're talking about the one-arm high cable row. But once again, the wraparound capability of the lats is built into this exercise, not to mention the ability to stretch out the origin and insertion of the lat to their maximum. When you reach out all the way in front of your body, you have the distance between that pelvis and the arm as far as it can possibly be, intensifying that stretch to a level you really can't achieve on any other exercise. And again, we can take that unilateral benefit and really focus on developing the lats, overcoming any imbalances you might have. If you have access to the machine, this is going to be a must-do exercise. If you don't, I've got you covered, but it still belongs here in the almost best category. And so you might have been taken aback when I mentioned the lat pull down being in the worst category of back exercises. However, as always, how you do what you do matters. When we talk about doing the exercise properly, it makes the lat pull down rise all the way up to the top of the list, this time to the almost best category. You see, putting those elbows out in front of your body not only gives them a better mechanical advantage to ironically pull more, but it does so once again out of that safe position to allow you to do this for years to come. Not to mention the exercise is entirely scalable. With the simple shift of a weight pin in the stack, you can match not only the level of strength you have right now, but allow you to progressively load it to get to new strength levels, and with that, new gains. If you're interested in a little experimentation to see even better lat gains, then I invite you to try the rocking pull down variation I've covered before. This gives us that chance once again to get that wraparound capability of the lats tied into the movement as well by simply pulling a little bit harder on one side of the bar than the other as you bring it down. Either way here, guys, the lat pull down is a classic for a reason, and it belongs here squarely at the top in the almost best category. And wrapping up our exercises in the almost best category for back, we've got one here that ironically doesn't get its benefits from the wraparound function of the lats, but through its capability for overload and momentum to drive your gains. We're talking about the dead row. The opportunity to load this exercise up and then take advantage of the momentum the legs generate from below gives us a chance to experience a heavier eccentric on the way down. Not to mention, it's a great athletic exercise. It's an explosive movement, and dare I say, a fun one, that gives us a chance to learn how to move our bodies explosively through space from our feet to our fingertips. Guys, the dead row belongs here for me at the top of the top in the almost best category. All right, so I mentioned the top of the top, but only one can be at the top of the best when it comes to the best exercises for your back. Or is that two? You see, in this case, we've got two spots here, the weighted pull-up and the barbell row, that are going to share the top spot and earn that green star. See, we're talking about first the barbell row being the best option for building your back without the deficits we talked about, maybe with the pen lay row. The barbell row gives you that option to maximally overload the lats while still having an eye towards the safety of the exercise. Now, if your low back is still something of concern, you could always do the exercise in a chest supported fashion, which is still going to give you all the benefits on the lats, but provide a little bit more support for those that need it. Now, talking about the vertical pulling exercise, guys, it's the weighted pull-up that wins for me. And again, you have to do both, so that's why we're linking them here. The weighted pull-up gives you the chance to add weight if able, so that you can overload the exercise once again. And the fact that the accessibility of the exercise is much higher than having to have access to a lat pull-down machine is going to make it my top choice when it comes to vertical pull movements. Guys, the back is a big place, but when you know how to navigate through the exercise options to leave you with only the ones that are going to deliver the best gains, well then, you're ahead of the game. If you're looking to see where other exercises rank for other muscle groups, then I want you to check out our chest exercises ranked video here and our tricep exercise ranked here. Guys, if you're looking for a complete program where we take only the best exercises and work them into a step-by-step plan, you can find them over at ATHLEAN-X.com. If you haven't done so, make sure you click subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video when we put one out. See you soon.